There's a specific kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. It's the tired of a red notification you haven't opened in 4 months, because some part of you has decided that not knowing is safer than knowing. I lived like that for almost 3 years. Nobody sits down one day and decides to go $40,000 into debt. That's not how it happens. It happens $4.37 at a time, over years, in ways that all made sense when I did them. The card that seemed harmless in college, covering a friend's half of dinner because it was easier than doing the math at the table. A buy now, pay later button that made spending feel like it wasn't really happening. A car repair I couldn't pay cash for the week my hours got cut. None of those decisions were the problem. It was never checking what they added up to. Minimum payments have a way of making a balance feel like it isn't really there. The bill always got paid. That felt like proof I was fine. Somewhere in year 2, I stopped being someone who owed money and started being, in my head, just someone who was bad with money. That's a different thing, and it's a much worse one to carry. Because a bad habit you can fix. A character flaw feels like something you just live with. Sam asked once, casually, what my score was. I laughed and said, "Don't ask," like it was a bit. It wasn't a bit. I genuinely didn't know the real number, and some nights I'd guess at it lying in bed, and I always guessed lower than I let myself say out loud, and even that guess was wrong. It was worse than the guess. The drawer kept filling up, not because I couldn't do math, because looking felt like it would make it more real, and it was already real enough. The moment that actually broke something loose wasn't dramatic. A card got declined buying a birthday gift, in line, with someone waiting behind me. I paid with a different card like nothing happened and smiled the whole way to the car. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 1:47 in the morning, I sat down at the kitchen table and for the first time in 3 years, opened every single statement in one sitting instead of one at a time, months apart, so I'd never have to see the real total. 5 cards. I added it slowly, like I was hoping the number would change if I did it carefully enough. $40,127.18. I just sat there. I didn't cry exactly. I just sat there for a long time, looking at a number that had apparently been true for a while, whether I looked at it or not. I read about 2 ways to do this. Pay off whatever has the worst interest rate first, which saves the most money on paper, or pay off the smallest balance first, regardless of interest rate, to get an actual win faster. The math people say to do the first one, but I'd been losing to math for 3 years by avoiding it entirely. So this time I picked the version that would keep me from quitting, even if it cost me a little more in interest. A plan I'd actually stick to beat a better plan I'd abandon in 6 weeks. Then I did what everyone does after making a decision at midnight. I second-guessed it by searching whether it actually worked. Half the results said it was the smartest move for people like me. The other half called it a math mistake dressed up as motivation. I read for another hour, closed 19 tabs, and picked the plan anyway. Not because I was sure, because a plan I could actually follow beat a perfect one I'd quit in 6 weeks, and I'd already proven which one of those I was. I wrote all 5 cards on a whiteboard, smallest to largest, $840 at the top, just under $14,000 at the bottom. For the first time, the whole thing had a shape instead of just being a weight. I stood there for a minute just looking at it. 5 numbers instead of one enormous one. It didn't make the total any smaller. It just made it something I could actually start on a Tuesday instead of something I could only lie awake dreading. Here's the part nobody puts in these videos. For 3 weeks, I told exactly nobody. Not because I didn't have anyone. I had Sam, and a couple of other people who would have listened. I just hadn't said the number out loud to another human being. And some part of me was convinced that saying it would make it more true than writing it in a notebook already had. Eventually, I texted Sam and asked if we could get coffee. Just coffee. I didn't say why. We sat down, and I made it about 4 minutes into small talk before I just said it, the actual number, out loud, in a coffee shop to another person, for the first time in 3 years. My voice did a weird thing on the word 1,000. I hadn't expected that. Sam didn't flinch, and didn't lecture me either, which is what I'd been bracing for. Just asked what the plan was, and when I explained the whiteboard, said, "Okay, so what do you need from me?" Not fixing it, not judging it, just in it a little, with me. I hadn't realized how much weight the secret itself had been, separate from the debt. I told my mom a few weeks after that, over the phone, and her reaction was different. Less, "What do you need from me?" and more, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Which is its own kind of love, wearing a slightly guilt-inducing outfit. She offered to help with money. I said no, but thank you, because part of the whole point was proving to myself I could actually do this, not outsourcing the hard part to someone who'd already raised me once. She didn't push, just said to call her if that ever changed. It was the first time in 3 years someone in my family knew the real number and the building didn't fall down. 4 months in, the smallest card hit 0. I actually laughed out loud, alone, in my kitchen, at a piece of plastic being worth nothing. And almost immediately, some old instinct wanted to celebrate the exact way that had gotten me here. Buy something because I'd earned it. I caught myself with the tab already open. I closed it, not because I didn't want the thing, because I finally understood that the actual reward wasn't a purchase. It was watching the next card on the whiteboard become the smallest one. The harder test came a few weeks later. A group trip, flights already being priced, a group chat getting excited, the kind of thing where saying no doesn't just cost money, it costs a little bit of belonging. I said I couldn't make this one. Nobody was rude about it. It just got quiet in the chat for a second, in the specific way it gets quiet when everyone's deciding whether to ask why. That weekend, while 4 group chat notifications turned into a shared album of a beach I wasn't on, I sat at home and made dinner for one and told myself this was fine. This was the plan. This was temporary. It was true. It was also just quietly lonely in a way none of the finance advice had warned me about. The second card took longer, so I stopped waiting for extra money to show up and started making some. Sold things I hadn't used in a year. Picked up delivery shifts 2 nights a week. Started cooking Sunday for the whole week instead of ordering out of exhaustion on a Tuesday. None of it was interesting enough to post about. That was sort of the point. The whiteboard didn't care how I got the extra $140 a week. It just needed it to show up on a schedule, whether I felt like it or not. Card 2 took 9 months, almost twice as long as the first one, because the number was bigger and the motivation was quieter the second time around. But it hit 0 too, eventually. On an unremarkable Thursday I didn't even plan to make significant. I crossed it off standing in my work clothes, 5 minutes before I had to leave for a shift. Somewhere in there I skipped a concert I'd had a ticket held for since before any of this started. A band I'd wanted to see for years, playing 30 minutes from my apartment. I didn't buy the ticket. I watched 3 shaky phone videos of it online instead, and told myself that was basically the same thing. It was not basically the same thing. It was still the right call, and both of those things were true at once. Somewhere around month 14, I had a bad week. Car trouble, a double shift, and then, at the end of it, 20 minutes of scrolling other people's vacations and new furniture and lives that looked, from the outside, like they weren't doing any of this. I knew that wasn't the whole picture. It didn't stop it from feeling like the whole picture at 11 at night. I opened my budgeting app, and for the first time since that 1:47 a.m. night, seriously looked at the option to pause the extra payment. Not because of an emergency this time, just because I was tired, and tired makes a very convincing argument for quitting things that are working. I texted Sam instead of tapping skip. Didn't even say much, just having a rough one, thinking about pausing everything. Sam texted back almost immediately, "You don't have to decide that tonight." I didn't. I went to bed instead, and in the morning the urge to quit had quietly lost to the urge to just check the whiteboard one more time. I didn't skip the payment. I just really, really wanted to for one night, and that turned out to be allowed. 18 months in, my car's transmission went. The estimate was $1,100 I did not have sitting around because every spare dollar had a job already. For about a day, I seriously considered putting it on a card, the same habit that built the whole mess in the first place, standing right there, looking very reasonable in an emergency. Instead, I paused the extra payments for 2 months, paid the repair in cash from what I would have thrown at the debt, and picked the Snowball back up exactly where I'd left it. It felt like a step backward. It wasn't a step backward. It was just what real progress actually looks like sometimes, not a straight line. A line that gets interrupted and keeps going anyway. I picked up an extra driving shift for those 2 months to close the gap faster, which meant 2 months of being more tired than usual for no visible reward except a number that stayed the same instead of getting worse. Nobody claps for that part. It still counted. Card 3 took 9 months. Card 4 took almost a year. There wasn't a moment in there worth putting in a highlight reel. Just a lot of Tuesdays that looked like the Tuesday before it. Card 3 went to 0 on a Sunday, which felt appropriate, since Sundays had basically become the day I did the math, whether I wanted to or not. 3 down. 2 to go. I updated the whiteboard and made myself the same meal prep lunches I'd been making for over a year at that point, because a milestone isn't a reason to change a system that's working. Sam still texted about stuff, trips, dinners, things that used to be an automatic yes. Most of the time now I just said not this one, and it stopped feeling like missing out, and started feeling like keeping a promise I'd made to a version of me at that kitchen table at 1:47 in the morning. The fourth card hung around $600 for what felt like forever. Close enough to see the end, far enough that every week without hitting it felt like a small failure instead of the very normal math it actually was. I stopped checking daily. Checking daily was making $600 feel bigger than it was. When it finally cleared, I did something I hadn't let myself do in almost 2 years. I planned a nice dinner out, on purpose, budgeted for in advance. No guilt attached. It cost about what one impulsive night out used to cost me without thinking twice. The difference was I'd decided on it 3 weeks ahead of time instead of an hour ahead of time, and somehow that made it taste completely different. The morning I was going to make the last payment on the last card, I checked the account before I'd even gotten out of bed. The way I used to check it out of dread. This time, it was closer to disbelief. One card, $412, an amount that 3 years earlier wouldn't have even registered as debt worth mentioning. The call took 4 minutes. A very bored-sounding representative confirmed my balance was zero, asked if there was anything else, and that was it. No music, no confetti. Just a number that had been true for years, and now wasn't. I crossed out the last card on the whiteboard. 5 for 5. Then I did the thing that had started this whole second half of the story. I called Sam before I called anyone else, and just said, "It's done," and didn't need to explain what it meant. Then I did something I'd been putting off the whole time. I emptied that kitchen drawer. Every unopened envelope gone. It took less than a minute to empty 3 years of hiding, 6 weeks before I turned 30. Looking back at it now, none of the individual days look like much. A whiteboard update? A canceled trip, a car that broke down at the worst time, a friend who said you don't have to decide that tonight. Split up like that? None of it looks like the thing that changed my life. Add enough of those days together though, and apparently that's exactly what it is. The number is the part people ask about. It's not actually the part that changed my life. What changed is that I open my mail now. I know my balance without guessing. I don't flinch when my phone buzzes. That's not really about money. That's just what it feels like to stop hiding from something. If you've got a drawer like mine, actual or the mental version, you don't need a plan that's perfect. You need one number, written down honestly once. Everything after that is just Tuesdays. A lot of them, but they add up faster than the debt did. If you want the short version of everything that actually worked, write the real number down once. Even if your hands shake doing it. Pick the plan you'll actually stick to over the one that's technically optimal. Tell one person so you're not carrying it by yourself. And when you have a bad week, and you will, that's not proof it isn't working. It's just a Tuesday. Keep going anyway.